Blog Talk Radio.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both decided to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it doesn't show. How can I contain this pain? This pain, knowing that your eyes are blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to have the moon out of the sky and drop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is my old friend Doug Millar. We've been crossing paths and crossing states and working in the Patriot movement for many years. And I got to tell you, folks, I am considering looking for other work somewhere in other fields, because there is one problem with the Patriot movement. You don't support the people that are putting their lives on the line. They're sticking their necks out to try to inform and save you. We need people working together. We need people supporting the people that aren't afraid to tell the truth, that aren't afraid to speak out. How about it, Doug? How are you, sir? Whoops, did we lose you? Let's see, let me see what happened to Doug here. Okay. All right, Doug, I'm not hearing you. Okay, let's try this. Did we lose the blog talk too? I guess we did.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we're reconnecting you now.
All right, we got kicked off this somehow, and let's see if we can do this and get it back up again. Now we're back on Blog Talk, and my guest today is Doug Millar. We just had him on. We were connected.
Okay, Clay.
Yeah, the Fusion Center must not like my guest list for today, so sorry about that. We lost you and Blog Talk Radio. Skype crashed, but we got it back and we're back up. Doug, I was just saying that I'm considering looking for other work somewhere in other fields because the Patriot movement does not support the people that are sticking their necks out, risking their lives, risking their reputation, risking everything to inform the people, to sort through tons of information to give people what's really happening. One of the things that we're going to talk about is the involvement of the Catholic Church in revolutions, in seizing people's properties and wealth like down in Argentina, murdering children and other things. And
exactly.
We may even have, I may have even found something here that explains that. I've got other people that are going to be talking to us. I've got clips I'll be playing from people like Ken O'Keefe, and who have been fighting the Israeli and the atrocities that they've inflicted upon the Palestinians, who were, by the way, the real people. The Jews weren't there. The Palestinians were the ones that walked with Jesus Christ, that were with Christ. And there's a war against the church, and part of that war is from within the church, the false prophets that pose as churches, the Catholic Church. And we may have found an answer here. I've got a picture here from inside the Catholic Church that talks about the enthronement of Lucifer in the Vatican. Full-blown Lucifer worship at the Catholic Vatican. Now, I know that may be hard for people to consider, especially Catholics who have been brought into that. And it's the Catholic Church that is partially, if not fully, responsible for the murder of millions of Native Americans, the American Indian, both in South and North America, which in South America their civilization was more advanced than the European civilization. How about it, Doug? Weigh in. Doug, did I lose you again? Oh, there you are.
Did you want me to comment on that?
Yes, sir. I want your comments. You are my guest on the show today.
All right, thank you. Folks, I'm Doug Millar. I met Clay Douglas of all dates on August the 1st, 1995 in Long Beach at the Preparedness Expo. And at the time, I had been investigating exposing violent crimes against children covered up by law enforcement for almost 3.5 years. And we talked, if you remember, Clay, we talked about a new book that hadn't even come out yet. Well, I guess they come out, but by Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips, Transformation of America. Remember that?
Yes, sir, I sure do. I got to meet Kathy and Mark Phillips and smoked a joint with them and just had a wonderful conversation with them and featured them on this show many times.
Oh, you're right. And so I was the first master of ceremony to ever take them public in America, and it was in Polyclass's hometown back on February the 3rd, 1993. And so I'd already been investigating violent crimes against children full time for a year and a half at that point. It covered up by the FBI, involving the CIA, et cetera. And so it was a real pleasure to be their master of ceremony in Polyclass's hometown 8 months before she was kidnapped, and then on October 1st of 93, and then she was tortured and murdered on Halloween the same year, a month later. So regarding the Vatican, I just want people to know I do not investigate conspiracy theories. I have been investigating the Illuminati, better known as the Illuminati, since I purchased Myron Fagan's long play records back in the summer of 1967. So that's over 48 years. And so I can assure you that what Clay is telling you is not only well documented, but we're going to talk about it in depth. And we'll be revealing things before that I've never revealed on a talk show before. And so it's going to be a wild 2 hours. So you should get your tape recorders out, your pens and papers, and be sure and email your family and friends right now to get them to listen to this program and or the rebroadcast.
This is one of the things we have to do, folks. You have to share this show. You have to share this information. You can't be worried about being called anti-Semitic, anti-government, or anything else. That's a lie that they tell you. I'm not anti-government. I'm not anti-Semitic. And I'm just trying to...
I'm not either.
I keep, Jesus told you, not me. Jesus told you to beware of the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. And the synagogue of Satan is also...
In Revelation,
yeah, go ahead.
He said so in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 of Revelation. He said almost the identical thing twice, saying that they are the synagogue of Satan.
Children of the devil. The Jews who say they're Jews but are not. And that could be the Ashkenazi Jews. Jesus foresaw what was happening 2,000 years ago.
Exactly. And I got some Jewish blood in me. And my wife was a German Ashkenazi Jew. We both became Christians. And so, they can't call me anti-Semitic, that's for sure. And, we know that Semites are not just Jews. And we're really, the term Jews was not even in the Bible until the Illuminati was created back in May Day 1776 at a Jesuit university at Ingolstadt in Bavaria, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, folks, I have told you, and I try to tell you this every day, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. It has no bearing on what's happening today. Be proud of your heritage, but do the right thing today. Do the right thing today. You've got to stand against the New World Order. You've got to stand against the Luciferian or Satanic. I don't even know if it's, I think they may have corrupted the name of Lucifer, too. I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I wasn't there 4,000 years ago. I don't know for sure. But one of the things is, since Doug's talking, and there's going to be other things here. I'm going to bring up some statements about the criminals in the White House by Ken OKeefe, and I've got a few other things in here that I want to touch on. But the point here, but I think I'm even going to bring up the speech that Vladimir Putin came in. Now, I told people, Doug, again, let me elucidate on this. I don't care what church you were brought up in. I don't care what color your skin is, up to a point. But when the church or the New World Order declares war against white people, and that includes Jews out there, that includes a lot of people, Frenchmen, Russians, Germans, and they did declare war against the Germans and slaughtered millions of them. They slaughtered millions of Russians so they could install their Stalinist, satanic, communist regime. Vladimir Putin,
That's right.
Vladimir Putin has stood up against them. Vladimir Putin is more of and a better world leader than Obama, in my opinion. In my opinion. And since we started talking about the Catholic Church, let's listen to this.
Father, I've got an article here entitled "Two Eminent Churchmen Agree."
Yes.
That they're...
This is Father Malachi Martin.
Oh, wonderful hero.
Okay, let's see what he's got to say.
Jesuit, of all things.
Enthronement of Lucifer in the Vatican. There's a statue of Lucifer with a flame burning there between his feet, and it's that picture's taken from the Vatican.
Father, I've got an article here entitled "Two Eminent Churchmen Agree."
Yes.
That there actually is, this is a shocker to a lot of people.
Yes.
That there are satanic practices going on at the Vatican. Could that be true?
Yes.
You want to say that? If I was a lawyer and you were on the witness chair, I'd say, would you say
it's out loud? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Now, when we say in the Vatican, it's at a certain level, and there's no doubt about it that there have been and still are practices that are formally venerating Lucifer, the prince of this world. There's no doubt about it. The Vatican itself has about 8 resident exorcists. And it uses those both there and in the 2 other cities that are devil-ridden in Italy, Milano and Torino. Milan and Turin. But there's no doubt about it that satanic or Luciferian practices, because it's really of the prince, and his name is Lucifer. It's really of the prince that these, in veneration of him and service of him, that these actions have taken place and do take place.
All right, I think we got more on that. Let's see. Yeah, astounding revelation and expose of the nature of the beast, the Roman Catholic Church. This report should be an end to the skeptic. If you claim Catholicism, now is the time to revisit your belief.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty aware of the fact, and whoa, I got a big echo there.
Yeah, we probably do.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I can hear you fine.
Okay.
No echo on this.
The Jesuit priest Malachi Martin talked on many radio talk shows, and he stated that he was in good standing with the Jesuits, and privately he told a friend of mine, I can't disclose the name, that he had permission from the Pope to expose the Masons in the doing the Masonic rituals and human sacrifices in the Vatican but only to write it as fiction based on fact. Have you heard that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in addition to that, things I'm sure you haven't heard before, and that is that I met with a internationally prominent person, and a mutual friend had told me that he had been given by Malachi Martin. He was a traditional Catholic, and he was very devout, but he was just given by Malachi Martin a list of the 2,000 priests in the Vatican, priests, bishops, archbishops, and cardinals who were involved in Masonic rituals, secret ones, in the Vatican. And, of course, I'm sure that most of those people didn't know, just like in the Masons, that they, at the top of the heap, the Third Degree Masons are actually involved in satanic human sacrifices in the Vatican. Now, I'm going to give you some background on that, but I wanted to get that out first to get people's attention why they need to tell their friends, email them, call them, get them on this show, because we're going to take the gloves off like never before.
Well, let's add this here in a few minutes here. The Pope's deacon invokes Lucifer, Satan, during pagan Easter Vigil Mass in 2012, and they are providing the translation of that passage. Let's see what they've got to say here. If you understand Latin, you might be able to translate it for yourself. Flaming Lucifer finds mankind. I say, O Lucifer, who will never be defeated, Christ is your son, who came back from hell, shed his peaceful light, and is alive and reigns in the world without end. Now, this is a little different view of the story of Christ in the Bible, because this is what the Luciferians, this is what the Satanists do. They twist everything. Let's go on here.
Partes mutuati tamen luminis detrimenta non novi. Aliturenin liquantibus celis.
In Latin, he sings, and it goes like this.
Quasi substantiam preciose oius lampadis, apis mater reduxit, overe beata nox.
Flammus aelis Lucifer matininus inventi equum Lucifer qui nascent occasion Christ Philus qui regressus and in terris humano generis dennis illicit et vivit ac regne seclorum. And that may not be an accurate reading of that.
Quaternis celestia humanis divina iunguntur. Oramus ergo te, Domine, ut cereus iste in honorem tui nominis consecratus, ad noctis uius caliginem destruendam, in deficiens persevere.
We're getting an image of a
Et in
candle.
odorem suavitatis acceptus, supernis luminaribus misceatur. Flammas eius, Lucifer matutinos inveniat. I
say, O Lucifer, who will never be defeated, Christ is your son.
Christus filius tuus, Christus filius tuus,
Christ is Lucifer's son.
Filius tuus,
Christ is not Lucifer's son that used Satan. This is filmed here at an Easter vigil in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican.
Wow.
God calls his people out of Babylon, Revelation 18:4. Get out, folks.
Right.
Now here they are doing it again for the skeptics. You can even understand that if you don't understand Latin.
Christus filius tuus, qui regressus ab inferis, humano generis serenus iuxit, et tecum
Now, folks, I'm seeing here the whole Catholic Mass, the priests, the cardinals, and all of the Catholics in their churches and arrangements in this cathedral here, while they're singing to Lucifer. I don't know what more proof that you need. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is full-blown Lucifer worship at the Catholic Vatican.
I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues.
I would say that would apply to the New World Order today. We wish it to be your rule, first of all, to tear away the mask from Masonry and to let it be seen as it really is. That was Pope Leo the 13th, Humanium Genesis on Masonry. So you have had popes, you have had priests, you probably have had Jews try to...
Freemasonry is the center and queen of secret societies, binding members to secrecy by fearful oaths. This hallmark of evil is confirmed by the wicked aims and the wicked fruits of Freemasonry, which are the overthrow of Christianity. And there are enemies of our Lord Jesus Christ right back from the moment he was crucified. That is the explanation of the paralysis of the Catholic Church. The paralytic state in which the Catholic Church is. The Freemasons are in control and Satan has been enthroned. And until some pope has the power and the courage to chase the devil out, a large number of the leading churchmen are at the service of Satan through Freemasonry.
Did you catch that? Could you hear that? There's a priest talking about, tell we've got a pope that is courageous enough to throw the devil out of the Catholic Church. This is what we've got. This is what we've got in Masonry, too. You want to talk about Masonry a little bit, Doug? Did I lose Doug again? No?
Oh, sorry. There I am. Okay. Most Jews, most Masons don't have a clue what goes on at the top. But 75% of the Masons, according to Masons I've talked to, stop at the third degree. It takes them anywhere from 1 to 3 years to become a third degree Mason. But now because they're losing so many Masons and their sons and their grandsons don't want to join, they now started recruiting Masons at fairs and different events nationwide. And so I learned this from Masons. In fact, I recommend you all get the book Deadly Deception by a 33rd degree Mason exposing their Lucifer worship at the 33rd degree. And his name is Jim Shaw, and his co-author was Tom McKinney. And so when Jim Shaw knew, as he became a born-again Christian just before 2 weeks before he went to Washington, D.C., the world headquarters of the Masons, 13 blocks from the White House, to be interviewed for a week regarding his belief system. And his most of the 32nd degree Masons never are allowed to become a 33rd degree because they don't answer the final question right. And what is that? Who is your God that you are seeking and have been seeking since you became a first degree Mason? If they don't say Lucifer is the light and the God I'm seeking, 99% of the 33rd degree Masons are not allowed in. I should say, 32nd degree Masons are not allowed to become 33rd. Because Jim Shaw, and of course I read his book, he was a national religious leader for the Masons. And he was for a year or two before he went to Washington, D.C. to qualify for the 33rd degree. And so he asked a friend of his that he had made friends with during the week they were being interviewed. When he came out, he said, he asked you who you worship and who you're seeking the light for? And he said, yes. And he said, well, what was your answer? And the man said, Lucifer. And so then when they left that room, all the Masons that qualified to be 33rd went through one door, and Jim Shaw was required to go through a separate one because he did not say worship Lucifer. And so Doc Marquis, that's Marquis, was raised in the French division of the Illuminati down in the French Quarter, I should say, in the southeastern states. And so he decided to leave the Illuminati and expose the Illuminati. And he was actually in the French division of the Mafia also. And so he speaks with a lisp because, he was sodomized so much as a child. No one's ever seen him, as far as I know, ever dating a woman. But he exposed a lot of things about the Illuminati, and he said that almost every 33rd Mason is a member of the Illuminati. I talked to him about that privately as well as on camera in Las Vegas. And so anyway, I could go on and on. But I think that's probably enough for this now. Do you want me to continue talking about the Masons?
No, let's go on. Let's flash forward here. These conspiracy theories aren't really theories. The Masons, the Catholic Church, and the Jewish secret society, whatever you want to call them, B'nai B'rith and whatever. It's they're real. They have a presence here, and they are controlling things. And let's see what we can do here. How about listening to Vladimir Putin here? Or
okay.
Okay, let me find that. Okay, where am I at here? Where am I getting my history here?
So
lot of people are interviewing and publicizing what Putin has to say these days. A lot of Americans like Putin a lot better than they do Obama, right?
Well, I actually believe that he's more of a Christian than Obama. And
you could say that about Lucifer too.
Let me see here. Where's my face? There's my Facebook page. And we've also got a story on Facebook about Pope Francis I and the CIA Operation Condor death squads. And I also want to talk about the war on white people, because that's coming up. Here's a speech from Putin, who just brought the Rothschild world government plan to a screeching halt. BRICS is happening, folks. BRICS is happening.
You're my favorite.
Thank you. I appreciate that, lady. I wish you were talking to me.
Bye. You're my favorite.
Thank you. World News with David Voss.
Well, hello, friends. This is David
BRICS
Voss.
Bank viewed as IMF competitor.
And it's good to see everybody today. In the news today, Russia and China and some of these other countries have done it. The collapse of the Rothschild elite Jewish bankers that have run the world for hundreds of years, perhaps all the way back in a line of people through the Windsors and the Hanovers and the Merovingian line and all the way back to Babylon.
And by the way, let me add to that I have that whole history in my book, Mystery Babylon, which is available for $10. You can get the PDF file for $10 at shop.freeamerican.com. If you want to help support this show and the guests that we have up, go to shop.freeamerican.com and order some of those. You can read it immediately. We got 300 years of history of the Rothschilds there. And this is current news. The BRIC system that we've talked about here, this is a new development bank that's been started by Russia and China, and I think it's quite possible that after 100 years of domination by the Jews, who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan, you can call it communism. As Rabbi Weiss said, yeah, some people call it communism. I call it Judaism for the masses. Maybe they got tired of being ruled by the Rothschilds, and so they went out and started their own bank. China has more gold than we do because the English stole all of our gold. And, of course, the killing blow on that was the English president, Roosevelt, who took the rest of the gold. Your grandparents were forced to turn their gold in, take it to the bank where they were paid, I believe it was $16 an ounce.
Well, you know what the date of that order was? They had to turn their gold in by what date?
I think it was sometime in 1933. That's when Roosevelt pledged the American people as collateral to the English bankers.
Well, here's a more specific. When I was in Salt Lake City investigating Elizabeth Smart kidnapping and everything, I went to patriotic meetings once a week with many dozens of Mormons and ex-Mormons, and they had on the wall the original declaration where President FDR, Roosevelt, ordered all the gold to be turned in on May 1st, 1933. And of course, that's the founding date of the Illuminati, as we know, back in 1776. And FDR said this, and you can go on the internet and read it verbatim. I'm just going to paraphrase it. He declared as the 32nd
He was elected in November of 1932 and sworn into office in January 20th of 1933, and he was a 33rd degree Mason. And he declared, in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you know it was planned that way. Okay? And he should know because, as I said, almost 99% of the 33rd degree Masons are actually involved in the Illuminati and are Lucifer worshippers. So there you have it.
All right. Let's go on here and see what else they've got to say about this new development bank. This is the BRICS. That's Brazil, Russia, I'm not sure what the I is, Ireland or Iceland, and
India.
India. That's right. Okay.
These people that have run the world since the time man began running the world have been defeated. Mr. Putin joined their little club, you know, like the little KGB, and worked his way up there, and then he got to the top, kind of like JFK, and he decided he wants to bring them all down. But he survived. They didn't kill him. They're not gonna, he got him over the barrel. He won. He took them all down. Oh, yeah, I know. He only have a few $1 billion in his pocket, but these Jewish elite bankers have literally trillions of dollars in offshore accounts. And all the gold and silver, they own, Walmart, Monsanto seeds, so we can't even eat without these people. We won't be able to buy or sell anything without these Jewish elite bankers, these Rothschild bankers, because they own the computers that I'm speaking on, the phones that you use every day, all of the technology, all of the computer chips, the silver mines, the gold mines, the phone companies, the electric company, the oil company. Everything you do, you eat, you sleep, your beds, your cars, the tire, the oil companies, the energy, they own it all. And you can't buy the food unless you go to Walmart. And they own that too. You can't get to Walmart without a car. And they own those too. But Putin has brought them all down today, and they're done for. So it kind of seems, it's a big deal. But with all this other stuff going on, and then on top of that, we got shootings and riots, and, Fukushima, that's a pretty big deal. But that's kind of gone, downhill now. But this is really a big deal, folks. And whether or not it's a real thing or not a real thing, it's a big deal. Most people that I have, heard on YouTube, comments, and message boards, I guess most people believe that this is real, that Russia, China, Brazil, and these other countries are actually trying to stick their nose in the air and go against the IMF or the World Bank or the Rothschild, powers. And, it's kind of like, yesterday I did the video on Putin having something to do with ISIS, and oh wow, I don't think I expected that at all. I mean,
this is Jim Rogers talking. He's a financial expert, talking about why the BRICS starting the bank.
I've been doing this now for a while. I've never had such a bad reaction.
Yes, sir.
I would like to mention the fact that, think about this, BRICS, as we know, it's been for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Every one of those nations where the revolution occurred, and all 5 of those nations are run by communists who took over those countries who were fighting the New World Order. And so I believe that they are actually a division, the BRICS nations are a division of the Illuminati, and they are doing it to bring down America, because we're the last bastion. When America falls, our guns are confiscated. If they are, the whole world will collapse like dominoes. And I want to also mention the fact that the very beginning of your show, I love it when you had Bush Sr. being quoted, and last Friday was September the 11th. And so September 11th, 1990, 25 years ago, last Friday, that's when George Bush Sr. said the new world order. He was talking to the United Nations and he was predicting, and what happened exactly 11 years later? Well, the attack on the Twin Towers, 9/11 happened. So that was no coincidence. Would you agree?
I would agree, and the whole problem with everything they're going. First of all, they control the press. So and just like Roger said, they control everything. They've got their finger into everything. So we don't know what the truth is. Putin could be working for the communists. The whole he could have been, and he was put up by the whole communist regime, and he comes off as a good guy.
KGB, right?
Huh?
He was KGB.
Yes, he was. And you've got the CIA operating this country. It was the CIA that came to me when I was in the hospital telling me, warning me about publishing and doing this. They kind of cloaked it. We don't like you publishing that motorcycle magazine. The reason they didn't like that was because I still had an income coming in. That was still working for a few more months until I got out of the hospital. And
right, and it's really sad, but it's true that even though Putin is much more popular among a lot of people in America, I'd say millions and millions of people in America, than Obama, like they said, you can trust a communist to always be a communist. And just because they took the wall down, that was, of course, since Russia was created by the Illuminati, he eliminated the Tsar because the Tsar, his family, stopped the Illuminati from conquering America during the Civil War. And so anyway, they retaliated against the Tsar just like they retaliated against the French king, right?
The Civil War was a perfect example of how they operate: divide and conquer, divide and conquer.
Right.
Well, you could be right on that. You could be right on that. If they're controlling all the gold, China controls all the gold. What happened to our gold in Fort Knox? And
you know what happened. I can remember when I was a kid going to movies in those days. I'm talking about. I was born in '36, so in the mid '40s, I was going to movies after World War II, and every movie always had a newsreel back in those days, giving us the latest weekly news on the nation and the world. And we watched even though America had lots and lots of gold in Fort Knox back in those days, and really was the most powerful nation in the world at that time, we watched newsreels month after month after month for years, where the Fort Knox gold was being shipped to countries that owed us trillions of dollars. Why would we allow them to take their gold out unless it was the government was already controlled by the Illuminati?
Well, Roosevelt was certainly a part of the whole Jewish power structure. So.
Exactly.
All right, let's see what else we got here. I'm going to bring up another speaker here for just a moment, because he is someone that's been fighting against the whole Jewish control. He has been supporting the Palestinians. He has tried to help them. Or maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do this. Let me see what I got here. No, we'll do this. We'll do this because this man has gone through what I've gone through. Every time I've tried to get something started, get an organization started, I've been shut down. Somebody comes in to try to... Go ahead.
Me too. Well, I have too, until we formed Unite for Justice 5 years ago, and we got over 80 co-founders, including Ted Gunderson, John DeCamp, and Dr. Stan Monteith.
Yeah, let's make a mention right here. Ted Gunderson was a good guy. He was a friend of mine. And, of course, I've been demonized for being his friend by a so-called patriot by the name of Stu Webb. To hell with you, Stu Webb. You're a liar, and you're a con artist, and you're a thief. You're not a patriot. If you can comment on that, then I'm going to...
FBI. That's right. An FBI informant. I got that from Ted Gunderson.
All right. This is Ken O'Keefe. He says it's time to arrest traitors in the White House and the Congress. I agree.
I agree.
And actually, this film is coming from Russia Today. One other thing I've always told you people, the whole Cold War was a con. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Bullshit. That's Hollywood talking to you, trying to set you up. So we've got an enemy. So we can be afraid. Be afraid. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russian people were never our enemy. The Bolsheviks were. The bankers were. But not the Russian people. And probably the same said of the Chinese people here too. They lost more people than the Russians. More Chinese were killed in Mao's takeover than the Russians. Now this is...
more.
Yes, this is, and this could and is and will happen here. How many of your babies have been murdered by Planned Parenthood? Over 50, 60 million children, unborn, some of them born live and used for body parts and other DNA flesh. Now, hang on here. Russia Today, Sophie and Company.
Hello and welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shepard. Nazi Kenneth O'Keefe served as a U.S. Marine, but after being discharged, he was left with only a feeling of disappointment. He burned his U.S. passport and dedicated himself to a different cause. His rich activist biography includes being a human shield in Iraq, sailing on a Gaza flotilla, protecting marine life in Hawaii, and helping establish dialogue with Iran. And he is our guest today.
As a Marine, Kenneth O'Keefe fought against Iraq. It shattered his view of the world. Ever since, he has been fighting a war against war, facing American bombs as a human shield or running the Gaza blockade. He is never afraid to speak truth to power. But what makes him take up action for others?
So I'm here with activist Kenneth O'Keefe. It's really great to have you on our show. Kenneth, I know that you've led a human shield action in Iraq right before the war started, and then you were deported. Do you follow what's going on in Iraq now? For example, the November death toll was almost 1,000, and 2013 is the deadliest year since 2008. Why do you think the removal of Saddam hasn't improved the lives of Iraqis? Or has it? I don't know.
Well, I think if you really want to know the truth about the invasion of Iraq, there's clearly some incentives for the invasion. Oil, securing oil was one of them. Establishing permanent military bases in the region was another one. But a far less talked about reality is Israeli plans, which made clear that the balkanization of surrounding countries, in particular Iraq, if we go to Oded Yanan's plan for Israel in the 1980s, it lays out very clearly a strategy of destabilizing all of the surrounding areas of Israel. This includes Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and even Egypt and Saudi Arabia. And this long-term goal is part of the Greater Israel Project. So in terms of the sectarian divide you see happening in Iraq today, it's actually all part of a very well-designed plan to try and secure the goal, this fantasy goal of the Greater Israel Project.
Okay, but why would Israel benefit from an unstable Middle East, an unstable Arab nations? Because what we see that this instability actually is followed by fundamental Islam, and people who are overthrown are either replaced by fundamentalist powers, or there's just more sectarian violence that grows.
Yes, and it would seem on the surface from a sane point of view that everything is going wrong. But in fact, when you fracture a country along sectarian divide, ultimately you weaken the country. What the last thing that Israel or the United States wants is a strong Nasser-type leader, an Arab nationalist who will seriously ensure that the resources of that country are taken and protected and used for the benefit of the people. That's the last thing that the empire wants and that Israel wants. So while you have these religious fundamentalist nutcases who are running around bombing and doing all sorts of stuff like that, you have a weakened, fractured country in Iraq, and that is the prerequisite for ultimately expanding Israel into the fantasy of the Greater Israel Project. It doesn't seem sane, and it's not sane, because those who are trying to carry out these agendas are pure and simple psychopaths.
And so you think that American administrations, one after another, have been following this plan for 30 years?
If you ask me how the world functions, then you have to understand one thing plain and simple. The head of the snake, the system of power, is headed by the financial system. The bankers rule the earth through the private control of the issuance of money, debt-based money, which we're all supposed to pay, ultimately with all of these things that they call austerity and whatnot. The bankers basically, through the control of the issuance of money, which allows them to provide themselves with an infinite supply of money, means they can buy anything and anyone that can be bought. So when we look at the vast majority of governments around the world, they're nothing more than puppets who are carrying out an agenda for the bankers. And the bankers at the top of this pyramid are, as I've said, plain and simple psychopaths. They're drunk on their own power. They're used to getting everything they want. They can buy anything and anyone that can be bought. And this explains the corruption of virtually every government we can look at. And the policies do not reflect the interests of the people. They reflect pure and simple the interests of the bankers.
But Kenneth, if what you're saying is true, that governments obey the big banks and the big money, then it would really take the people and revolution in each country that you have named to actually change things around. Do you really see revolution taking place in America?
Now, 20 years ago, 1994, I started the militias around the country. My particular state was New Mexico. I worked with the governor, and we talked about all of this then. And Michigan militia, Montana militia, and dozens of other militias were formed there, and some of those are still active today. The only thing we need now is a little bit more support, a little bit more donations. You're listening to Sophie from Russia today, talking to Ken O'Keefe, who has been on my show live just last month.
For example?
Right. It's already happening. I'll give you a great example of why I'm optimistic about things in America. You know, the President of the United States, traitor that he is actually a constitutional lawyer. He's actually trained at the highest levels of university in constitutional law. Do you know how obscene it is that somebody who is trained in constitutional law, giving himself the authority to execute anyone, anywhere, at any part of the planet with no jury, no trial, no conviction, no nothing? This man is a dictator who has assigned himself the right to execute anyone, including U.S. citizens. I am confident that at some point the American patriots, who seem to be in a bit of a coma and have been sleeping for a long time, are going to wake up soon and realize that while they took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the President of the United States also took that oath and has breached it so badly that he should be arrested and charged with with treason right now, and ultimately all of the sycophants in the U.S. Congress who passed things like the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act, again, completely contrary to the U.S. Constitution, which is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. These people need to be arrested, and a government needs to be put in place that actually honors the U.S. Constitution. And I honestly believe that's going to happen. One way or the other, it's going to happen.
But you just started your answer by saying that the revolution is already happening, and then you went on by citing everything that's going wrong in America. Like, for example, the NSA leaks, right? You kind of touched upon them. Nothing's really changing within American society. I don't see people coming out in the streets and protesting, even though they know that they're being listened to. Even Europe. Look at Europe. Yeah, they express their outrage at the fact that they're being listened to, including the presidents, but nothing is really happening. It's not like America is cutting down on their NSA programs, and it's not like people aren't listened to anymore. So where's the revolution that you're talking about?
Let me give you... I'll tell you what, this is another thing that really excites me, Sophie, because while you're not seeing it, apparently, and many other people may not be seeing it, let me give you a perfect example where the revolution has already occurred, and the first step of that revolution is awareness. No one is more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. The people of the world are starting to realize that they have been enslaved in a financial system which is effectively selling the future of their children down the river. And more people are becoming aware of that. They're also sick and tired of being lied to about one boogeyman after another. And ultimately, what happened in Syria, this is a key point, and I really want to make this point before we move on to the next one, because it's talking about the revolution that you're referring to. The reason why we did not hit Syria, the reason why we did not start bombing Syria is one simple thing, and that is that the people of the West and the world simply did not buy it. They didn't have to go on the street and protest. Keep in mind, back in 2003, we had the largest protest in the history of the world, did not stop the invasion of Iraq. But I'm telling you, the invasion and the occupation and ultimately the bombardment of Syria has been planned long ago. It's a stepping stone towards Iran, which is the ultimate goal for these psychopaths, and they could not bombard Syria, and the reason why they couldn't even vote to secure that vote to favor that here in Britain is because the people overwhelmingly did not buy it. In the United States, the approval for bombardment of Syria was about 9%. That's why the U.S. Congress, which is a treasonous body of government, couldn't even go to a vote on it, because if they went to a vote on it and actually voted for another war, and this farcical war on terror, where the fantastic American servicemen took pictures of themselves saying, I did not join the U.S. military to fight with Al-Qaeda in Syria, says it all. If they had made that move, there would have been an open revolution. The powers that be know that the people are probably ready to take major steps to stop this. And again, American patriots are going to go into the Congress and the White House eventually and arrest these cowards and traitors. But it's under the surface right now. It's getting ready. It's getting ready. And to show the power of the people, ultimately, we did not go into Syria. This is because the people did not provide the one key element for the powers that be, and that is their consent. If they don't have our consent, they can't do a damn thing.
So you actually bring me to my next point, which is Syria, and you're saying the allegations in the Western press that it wasn't Syria but Iran that was the actual goal, the final goal, is true. What happens now if Assad starts to look like he is finally achieving a decisive victory? How will the United States respond, do you think?
Well, again, keep in mind that the real problem that Assad faces is that while, yes, there are major human rights violations that happen in Syria and in every other Arab country and the United States and the Western world, ultimately there are human rights violations of obscene levels, especially in the United States. So they're in no position to talk about other leaders. Our leaders, the United States president, can execute anyone, anywhere, anytime, and does. So how can we talk about Bashar al-Assad seriously and say that this man is a problem compared to Barack Obama?
They will talk about it, and the world listens to American president. That's the difference. They will talk about it. They keep talking about it. That was the whole purpose of why they wanted to overthrow Assad, because there were supposedly human rights violations in Syria.
Yeah, but we can talk about the point that I'm making is that the U.S. president has given himself the authority to execute anyone, anywhere, anytime, for any pretext, any bogus reason. Is that more of a problem to the world than Bashar al-Assad? Of course it is. It's much more of a problem that the President of the United States says he can execute anyone, anywhere, anytime. And yet we're sitting here talking about Bashar al-Assad, which, granted, this man has committed crimes in Syria. There's no question of that. But when we look at the U.S. President, when we look at Israel, when we look at the Britain, this alliance, this true axis of evil between these three countries, the amount of devastation that has occurred in Iraq and Afghanistan and other parts of the world, Yemen, Pakistan, is so devastating, I think it's beggars belief that we as people can be conned into thinking that Bashar al-Assad is the problem, or that Ahmadinejad was the problem. We are the problem. We in the West are the problem, especially the United States government. So it really is quite ridiculous that we get manipulated into saying, oh, we have to take care of this problem over there. The problem is in our own backyard, and we know this. We've got to take care of our dirty, filthy house of corruption. The United States Congress is nothing but a den of traitors, the most sycophantic, disgusting traitors you can imagine. And the White House has got a dictator. This is a problem. This is a major problem, much bigger problem than what's happening in Syria or Bashar al-Assad.
And we'll be back after a short break to talk about should Iran be able to develop its nuclear program, and also why is it so bad having an American passport. Stay with us.
Right from the scene. First-rate news and eye-gripping pictures. On our...
All right, let's move past that here. Where we go? Headlines here from Russia today are 60 people killed and killed in a series of car bombs in Iraq. 2013, a year of carnage.
They look like bounty islands, where the locals can enjoy the sun and the ocean. But what was buried here years ago means these people are suffering the consequences. How much more poison lies under this ground?
Behind this zone, there is what we call the Colette Bank, on which there is a deposit of plutonium left by a security test which caused a dispersion of radionuclides. Despite previous cleaning efforts, there remains a deposit of a little less than 2 kilos of plutonium stuck in the rock and the coral reef, about 10 meters down.
Nuclear tests, a never-ending legacy on RT.
Yeah, let me mention that about the nuclear test.
Want news, programs, and documentaries and...
Nuclear tests. The nukes are created by, the nuclear bombs are created by the nuclear power plants, and you don't have to use plutonium, poison. You can do it with, well, another substance. I always miss the name here. And how are we doing here, Doug? I mean, is this
Oh, I love it. I like the variety, and instead of having me talk for 2 hours, I like the way you're bringing in other speakers on to help educate people, because I could go on for hours, days, weeks, and months of what I've learned about the Illuminati for the last 47 years. So I'm really glad that you're bringing in a good mix here. Thank you.
All right, and let me, couple of things here I want to talk to you. One, this war on terror, and I told you that was a war against anyone, anywhere that didn't want to go along with one world government. Now, the one world government, the plan is to, again, divide and conquer, and they want to bring in the black, the Hispanics, all of the refugees. The key word here is diversity. Diversity. But the ultimate goal is a program of genocide of white people. Because we are the greatest threat to the plan for Israel's, the Jewish New World Order, one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers. This is what Ken O'Keefe was just trying to tell you. He didn't get into this material, so I want to.
Good.
This is called The End Game. This is the preview for the documentary called The End Game. White genocide documentary.
I'm not sure what's going on in Britain. Let me say, I don't know what's going on.
This is John Cleese, television actor, comedian, talking about serious things. And again, Britain has never been exactly our enemy, but it wasn't Britain, it wasn't the British people, that's us. We were the rebels that came from England to start this country. And the enemy is not English, it is the City of London. That's where the banksters live, operate. That's where the lawyers live and operate. And this whole country was formed with the 13th Amendment to bar the lawyers from serving here, from working here, from ripping off the American people, and they're still doing it. Tons of theft from these lawyers. This is John Cleese. Don't just believe me. So what's happening in England is a preview, again, of what's happening here, and they're also we're being hit with the Mexicans, they're being hit with the Muslims.
London. Because London is no longer an English city, and that's how they got the Olympics. I mean, they said we're the most cosmopolitan city on earth, but it doesn't feel English. I had a Californian friend come over 2 months ago, walk down the King's Road and said to me, well, where are all the English people? And I mean, I love having different cultures around, but when the parent culture kind of dissipates, you're left thinking, well, what's going on?
What's going on?
Most people, I would even be willing to say the vast majority of people, understand and recognize that government, especially at the federal level, is totally corrupt.
Keep in mind this film is on Facebook, Free America 69.
What it means for the capital. Figures compiled for the programme suggest that in the next 20 years, the ethnic diversity of this city will change dramatically.
For the first time ever, the number of people who class themselves as white British is now a minority in London.
People who identify as white British citizens are now a minority in their capital city.
White folks are on track to becoming, and I hate to say this, the minority in America.
A new report out by the government shows that by the year 2042, white Americans will no longer represent the majority of the population. That prediction is 8 years sooner than previously expected.
That the native French population would be finding itself in a rapidly decreasing minority.
Her kan etnisk norske være i mindretall om 20 år i 2030.
Children from white families in Birmingham are set to become a minority group for the first time when this year's census is collected in March.
The latest census suggests white British born are now in a minority.
Census Bureau says whites will be a minority.
Californians know a thing or two about demographic change. 70% of all state school pupils in Los Angeles are Hispanic.
For the first time in American history, non-whites will make up half or more of the next generation, according to a new study by the Pew Research Center.
The latest census suggests that white Brits are now in a minority in London.
And the fact that we are going to become a minority in our own country before 2050, well before 2050 for the younger people.
When the parent culture kind of dissipates, you're left thinking, well, what's going on?
And we British are being turned into strangers in our own land, and we were never asked whether we even wanted it.
about immigration within the United Kingdom. What are your feelings upon that?
Well, I think it's always been a very open policy, which I think is very admirable of you. But I think at some point there had to be limits to that. But Americans shouldn't be advising you on what those limits are. But at some point, I think you do have to limit that immigration because it's a small island, and ultimately, because I think you're losing your own culture.
Immigration, a good or bad thing?
I don't know what to say about that. I don't think it's a good thing.
I don't think it's a good thing. One intelligent white lady in this film here. This is what's happening, folks. You are being turned into a minority. What happens to the minority? I mean, think about the way the blacks were treated. Think about why Martin Luther King rose to power.
Isn't it strange how, for some reason, all white countries and only white countries have this forced mass immigration from the third world? There has been no vote about this at all. I often hear it said that people should have the right to live wherever they want. But if they think people should live wherever they want, then why do we have forced integration?
Obama
when the
has
government
brought
forces
in
integration of non-whites into white neighborhoods, we see
Mexican
the phenomenon
families, whole
of
families,
white
brought them in
flight.
by bus and airplane. They're getting a lot of graphics showing the moving of populations. Now there's white
There are
flight.
many people who have moved and I'm still in touch with them.
And they're white.
Oh yes, they're all white British, yes.
I want to live cheek by jowl with them and slowly but surely find that I'm the only person left in an area where everybody else has moved away from, and that's what's going on.
All the traditional communities are outnumbered completely by newcomers, and the newcomers keep on and on rolling in. It has a very alienating effect.
When white people live together in their own communities, those communities are then deemed too white. Millions of dollars are spent to make sure that these areas become more diverse. If everyone had freedom of association, then how could an area be too white? This seems like a huge contradiction. To say, yes, people have the right to live wherever they want, but why do we have forced integration?
Doug Millar, you got a comment
Yes, sir.
on this? You got a comment on this because, you know, this is genocide. I mean, this is the beginnings of genocide. And if you really look at the news, look at the black on white crimes, look at the statistics on the murders, the rapes, the thefts committed by illegal aliens. And we're not even trying to keep them out. We won't deport somebody. And there was a woman just killed in another state, just murdered by there was a newscaster. It was a newscaster murdered by an illegal alien that the State Department or the police department had refused to deport.
Exactly, and so regarding diversity in America, as we know, we don't have 12 million illegals mostly from Mexico in America. We have between 25 million and 40 million, according to documents and speakers telling the truth about the subversion of our country. And so it was not just Democrats that have allowed this. Both Bushes, as our president, also encouraged millions of them to come into our country illegally because they number one, they want to first of all, we know that Bush Sr. is one of the world leaders of the Illuminati, okay? And so obviously his son is too. And so it's sickening to me to see this happening because they're destroying the middle class. In fact, they've almost destroyed it totally. And so treason is the reason for the season, folks. Wake up and take your country back. nonviolently, I encourage you all to look into the National Liberty Alliance.org website. That's the National Liberty Alliance.org website. Why? Because they're organizing common law grand juries nationwide. Because the Constitution and our government was always under common law. You can read it in the Constitution. It's well documented that we didn't have what we have today, which is corporate government. It was actually, the corporation was created, government was in 1871 after they murdered President Lincoln. And now the federal funding, in fact, the federal government, the Supreme Court ruled what the government funds, it has a right to control. And so they used the bait of free money from Washington, D.C. and forced, they told every city, state, and federal, every city, county, and state government, you have to incorporate if you want the free money. And so treason is the reason for the season, because we don't have a constitutional government, as you know, Clay. We have now statutes and different laws on the books which are administrative law, not the constitutional law that we started with. And so we've got to take our country back. I encourage you all to get involved in the grand jury movement in your state and in your county. I'm on the state leadership here in Colorado, although we're not with NLA, National Liberty Alliance. We have we meet once a week, normally on a Sunday, for several hours, usually from 5 to 7 hours, and we are taking our country back nonviolently by serving notices to. We're using the original 13th Amendment, which is, as you know, it states in it that anyone who takes the title of nobility that's referred to in the Constitution under, anyway, and it's in all the documentation, because I don't have it in front of me, but it says that anybody takes the title of nobility, which is, of course, the American Bar Association is not incorporated in America, it's incorporated in London. And so those people, attorneys in England are called squires, and the American Bar Association calls them esquires. In other words, anybody who's a member of the American Bar Association or the State Bar Association are members of the esquires, which means the title of nobility in the original 13th Amendment, that was on the books for over 50 years, stated that, I should say states, it's current today, states that anybody that takes the title of nobility loses their citizenship. That means almost every law passed by Congress is being passed by attorneys for agents of a foreign government, and they have lost their citizenship, and we've got to take our country back. Do not vote for lawyers. I'm sorry, do not vote for attorneys, but many lawyers are not members of the bar. So that's important for you to understand. You got to check out your candidates running for office. Never vote for attorneys, because they're subversive in our country, even though some of them may not know it. Right, Clay?
Yes. Yes, we've had Carl Swinson on here. Click on his name if you want to hear the shows. He is trying to expose the attorneys, trying to come up with some alternatives, going to city councils and talking about this. And, you know, you can remember, folks, one thing here is that they operate by consensus. The lawyers, if you don't stand up and raise your voice and say, wait a minute, then they consider you to be part of the consensus.
Right.
So This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you enough courage, enough power. You're not alone out there. You're not alone. And you're not wrong by questioning the government, questioning the banksters, questioning this whole thing. Every time you take out a loan on your car, you are helping the banksters, not yourself. Until we get our own banks, and that doesn't even good. We've got a gentleman in Australia that's been on my show. He wants to start a bank, but he doesn't quite realize that as long as the Federal Reserve is controlling the banks and issuing the money, giving the money to the banks, it doesn't do you any good to start a bank. You could do better by following my plan here for the Liberty Villages. We don't have to save the world. We can save our neighborhoods, and that's exactly what this black gentleman, and I've had him on my website. He talks about the gardens and vacant lots in L.A. He's got it right on. He says he got...
I love your idea of the Liberty Villages, Clay.
What's that? Liberty Villages?
I love your idea of the Liberty Villages. You're offering solutions non-violently, right?
That's right. The Liberty Villages is... And you protect each other. This whole film here, and I'll play a little bit more of it here in a second, is to eliminate the white race, because you don't have any support there. I said one thing I kind of admire about the Jews is they don't let anybody go broke. They take care of their own. And if us white boys had it as together as the Jews, then we'd own the Federal Reserve, we'd own the Bank of England, we'd own the International Monetary Fund.
Right.
And let's go back here and see. Where'd we go here? Oh yeah, white genocide. This is now in the Liberty Villages. If you're Mexican and you want to get in there and you want to grow your own food, you want to grow your gardens, you want to raise your animals, more power to you. You can do that. You do that in the next acre over, do that in the next lot over, do that. Don't interfere with mine. Don't try to inject your culture into mine. You know, I'm a Texan.
Right.
I like living in Texas. I like living in Texas with Texans. And I'm trying to do my part to, not to integrate, but to educate. That's the key here.
Uncle Sam wants to help you diversify your neighborhood, whether you like it or not. Tonight, correspondent Doug McElway tells us about a new interactive effort that some people say is a huge overreach.
It's called Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. It will require the feds to gather data on segregation in every single American neighborhood and remedy it. In every single American neighborhood and remedy it.
Whether you like it or not.
When white people move to new neighborhoods, we see the process start again. The government forces integration.
In every single American neighborhood and remedy it.
And whites flee.
White flight.
First, they import millions and millions and gazillions of non-whites into otherwise all-white living spaces without a vote, without a discussion. Any discussion is met with what? It's met with psychological, you're racist, you're Nazi. You know, only whites can be racist. All whites are racist forever. So on and so forth. And then, of course, they force integrate, they force assimilate. And while they're doing that, they basically, everything's multiracial, multicultural, multiracial, interracial relationships. They do this in white countries and only white countries, and they tell us about our inevitable brown future.
Embrace diversity. Another
it's important to
key
remember
phrase.
that our country is stronger because of our diversity.
That's
We have to bring the benefits of diversity to our students, to our school, to higher education, to the state of Texas, and to the nation as a whole.
And that was Bill Powers, president of the University of Austin, who just brought back a few billion in gold, is trying to bring a few billion in gold back to the state of Texas.
Now, diversity.
So it's really important that if we get a more diverse profile of councillors, a community and
remember that
really
word,
important.
If anybody uses it, they ain't working
There
for
can
you.
be no ethnically pure state in Europe. We have a whole program of diversity which was aimed entirely at chasing down white people. So we have white flight, assimilation, that diversity means that all whites must be chased down. All whites must be chased down, which is what the word diversity means. Well, diversity means that whites can't escape. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you say in the article, white flight is declared as racism.
Yeah. It is considered, it is what diversity is meant to reverse. Chase down. Those two words are critical. Chase down white people.
It's going to be totally different. Most of the population will be non-white, maybe in 25 years.
Well, yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop that because I've got one other thing I want to hear. Doug, you got some comments on this?
Well, I could just comment on many things, but I want to take the gloves off now for the last half hour, Clay, and tell people things on your show that I've never discussed and explored before. But before I do, I want to urge everybody to go to a website called Vatican Assassins. All right? Check it out. The man put out an 800-page book, and of course, nobody wants to read an 800-page book, so he put it on the CD. His wife gave me 100 copies for free. When I met her at the second time he was at the Conspiracy Con in San Jose County. I should say at in the San Jose metro area. And the reason she gave me 100 of them for free is because I told her, I said, with your husband exposing the Vatican assassins full time also on not only just a book, but also by speaking on a website, your children are running around here and going to the swimming pool by themselves. You've got to protect your children. I deal with investigating violent crimes against children carried out by law enforcement, including the FBI and the CIA. And so the children are kidnapped every day in America, and your two children are more at risk than 99.99% of the children in America. And she thanked me so much for that. That's why she gave me 100 copies of the CD of the Vatican Assassins. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I met, as I told you, a man who, guess what, Malachi Martin gave the list of 2,000 Masons, I'm sorry, Catholic priests, bishops, cardinals, and archbishops in the Vatican involved in Masonic events. And we have no way of knowing what percent of them know that their leaders and are going to human sacrifice in the Vatican, but we know that they are doing that. And so I met with a man, the National Common, as I said. I met with him for a total of 4 times, for a total of almost 6 hours. Beginning, the first time was when I came back from Alaska, and I was told by a mutual friend of ours that he had the list of the 2,000 that Malachi Martin had given him as a traditional Catholic. And so I've been waiting for 20 years for him to actually go public with that list, and I don't know why he hasn't done it. because I'm 39, he's about my age, maybe even a year or two older. And so if he doesn't release that list and expose them as an internationally prominent person, I'm going to publicize him in my book, which I'm releasing exactly 1 month from this week. I'm going to be speaking in Seattle, Washington, at an international conference. I'll be speaking an hour and a half, both on Friday, the October the 16th, and Saturday, October the 17th, for an hour and a half. I get the best time of the day because I'm speaking at the lunch. And so that way you'll have a maximum crowd there. I'll have a table there for 3 days with my book. And my book is titled The 33rd Degree Masons Achilles Heel ? Cover-ups of child abuse, targeted individuals, mind manipulation, child slavery, Satanism, and murder in America. And so I'm taking the final cover-up, which is, we learn about paganism by reading that book, the final cover-up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska, written by my dear friend. I just met with him 3 weeks ago in Nebraska. He's Johnny Camp. And so this is the second, Johnny Camp told me that I tell everybody that his book is the most important book written in my lifetime. Okay? And so when the book came out called Why Johnny Can't Come Home, Kidnapped on His Newspaper Route, Used in Child Porn, Prostitution, Mind Control, and Other Crimes, that's the subtitle of the book. And of course, Johnny Camp represented his mother for years, and but now he can't do it because he has Alzheimer's. And so, Noreen Gosh, Johnny Gosh's mother,
she's been on my show. She has been on my show, Doug, many years ago.
Oh, fantastic! Good to hear. She's been on my show also several times, and
I've got one more thing, one more clip here that I want to play. It's only about 11 minutes, but it talks about some things that I think people need to know about here. It says it's under the title on my show, on my webpage, Free American 69. This event's just changed America forever.
Demonstrations in Mexico increased and became violent this weekend.
The protests spread today to Acapulco, where demonstrators temporarily blocked roads leading to the city's airport. Over the weekend in Mexico City, an angry mob set fire to part of the National Palace.
Poland's Independence Day celebrations have been marred for the fourth year running by clashes between nationalist demonstrators and police. More than 220 people were arrested after youths threw rocks and flares.
Chaos has broken out on the streets of Paris. Take a look. Cafes and police cars were smashed up by rioters during a march against police brutality.
We could be looking at Ferguson right here, folks. This is happening all over the world right now. People protesting against police brutality. Sometimes they're just not quite pointing at the international bankers, but wait.
Protests, at times leading to violence, have taken place in several Italian cities as people rallied against the government's labour reforms and austerity measures. Clashes erupted when demonstrators tried to reach the headquarters of Italy's ruling Democratic Party.
Nation shall rise against nation. From your Bible, folks.
U.S. relations with Russia soon to be getting frostier by the day, and in an unprecedented move, the Russian military says it now plans to send strategic bombers on regular patrol in America's backyard.
Russian bomber patrols over the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico would be very significant, U.S. military officers say, something the Russians have never done before. The bombers and their refueling tankers could be tracked all the way across the Atlantic, leaving plenty of time to scramble interceptor jets.
The announcement from Moscow comes as NATO recently confirmed that interceptions of Russian warplanes in Europe have increased threefold this year.
The top NATO commander says Russian tanks and troops are moving into eastern Ukraine. The development comes after Russia announced new Air Force training exercises near United States borders.
Tony Abbott's threat to short front Vladimir Putin is escalating dramatically. 7 News can reveal a fleet of Russian warships is steaming towards Australia, a defiant show of force from the superpower.
This is a very significant and provocative development. Our sources tell me these ships have arrived with no official notice from Moscow.
Russian warplanes or submarines have also been reportedly seen with the US, Canada, Australia, Japan, the UK and Sweden recently.
The relationship between Russia and the West has worsened to its worst since its most tense state since the Cold War.
Members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda group have decided to join forces and stop fighting each other. They plan to team up.
Now, Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have reportedly agreed to join forces in Syria after their leaders met in the country.
UN envoy to Syria proposed a way to bring an end to 2 years of fighting in Aleppo. The northern city, the biggest in the country, was occupied by anti-government rebels in 2012. Since then, the army's been trying to retake it. But there's another battle on the horizon. Aleppo is a key interest for Islamic State, which is drawing closer.
We ask Allah to help us slash their throats.
Okay.
We stormed the town with the will of Allah, and they scattered like rats. Again, war on white people. And this, on the same piece of film, Signs in the Heavens. Talk about Planet X, talk about some visions in the sky.
Texas, where the night sky lit up, and so did the 911 phone lines. Police fielding hundreds of calls from people who saw a blazing fireball or who heard what sounded like an explosion.
Tonight, across central Texas, many are asking, did you see it? That fire in the sky that some say caused a sonic boom.
We heard an explosion here on 57.
You can see the fireball on this dash cam video, and look at it here on this police cruiser cam. NASA confirming to ABC News it was a meteor. Just last week, people in several states saw fireballs racing through the sky. And overseas, check out this one streaking over Japan. And right now, the time to be looking up. We'll see more of these images that are out of this world.
What you're about to see is uncommon. In fact, you rarely ever get a chance to see something like this. Tonight, we look at one body of water that has changed colors, a color that resembles something blood-curdling.
Feast your eyes on this water. The tint that looks more like the blood
To a beautiful shade of red.
that runs through your body.
Hawaii, as that slow-moving lava we've been watching for months claims its first home
To that blast of Arctic air moving east after punishing much of the country.
A day and a half ago, it was like 66 degrees, and within like 30 minutes, it was like 30. I don't think anybody was prepared for that sudden of a change.
This, know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. 2 Timothy 3:1.
A terrible effort today by our guest chaplain, Imam Hamad Shabli, Islamic Society of Central New Jersey, Monmouth Junction, New Jersey.
So, November 14, 2014, are Muslim imams allowed to praise Allah on the House floor? Remember, Ken O'Keefe told you that these people, these congressmen, these senators are traitors. This should be proof.
Right, I agree.
Peace and the blessings of Allah be upon you. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher, the sustainer of the world. The most gracious, the most merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. O God, bless us as we begin a new day. Bless this assembly. Bless the people and nation it represents.
This is the Islamic Society of New Jersey.
The challenges for our nation and the world are many.
History was made today at Washington National Cathedral, but not without some controversy. That's because the historic moment was a Muslim prayer in the Christian cathedral.
Normally on a Friday, Muslim prayer services will be held around the corner here on Massachusetts Avenue at a mosque and at other mosques throughout the metropolitan area. But today those services were held here, and they made history. The call to prayer came high noon in the north transept of Washington's National Cathedral. Nearly 200 people gathered for a historic Friday prayer session at the nation's house of worship. Muslims from across the country came to the 2-hour prayer session, which was briefly interrupted by a protester.
Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior.
Tonight, growing outrage after a Maryland school district cancels Christmas vacation. Well, at least they're no longer calling it Christmas vacation.
No more religious holidays on Montgomery County Schools' calendar. Today, the school board voted to strip the calendar of any mention of religious holidays.
This is really something. The decision came after Muslim families urged the board to add the Eid holiday.
So in a 7-to-1 vote, the board agreed to remove from the calendar all references to religious holidays.
Well, it's often the subject of horror films, but there's actually a rapidly growing ministry in Oklahoma, exorcism.
Tulsa is one of 3 cities in the U.S. where Catholic priests meet to train to cast out demons.
In Orange County, a push to bring Satan into schools has leaders reconsidering district policy.
A satanic children's coloring book is creating controversy in Orlando, but if you read between the lines, the issue is a lot deeper than black and white. The Orange County School Board is considering changing its police regarding religious materials after a group of local Satanists asked to hand out a satanic-themed coloring book.
Now to Florida tonight, where parents are outraged after police entered a middle school without warning with what looked like guns drawn. Students, some texting their parents for help. They were terrified. But what they found out next has many angry tonight. It was a drill.
Lockdown drills in schools are now almost as common as fire drills.
This is a drill. We need to lock down.
The kids ordered to huddle in a corner, preparing for that nightmare scenario. It's usually made clear to the kids it's only a drill. But not at this Florida middle school yesterday, when police with AR-15 rifles like this one burst into classrooms. Children and teachers believed they were really under attack.
Time to show you some of this morning's headlines. The Wall Street Journal reports the Justice Department is collecting information from Americans' cell phones. It is a result of a secret surveillance program. Sources tell the Journal United States Marshals equipped small planes with a device called a dirt box. It scanned tens of thousands of cell phones looking for a criminal suspect. Data from non-suspect phones are scooped up as well.
A Dutch man had 2 wireless computer chips implanted in his body. He did it so he could store digital money and use chips for other purposes like program an alarm clock. Martin Wismeyer is an entrepreneur, and the London Telegraph reports that he decided the chips aren't secure enough yet to use permanently. He says the chips need to be encrypted so that information can't be stolen from them, but he says the experiment was a success. He says the chips can be used not only for digital currency, but as keys for your house or monitoring your health, even helping call a doctor if you have a heart attack. And he believes people who use the chips are helping to make them socially acceptable.
The mark of the beast system, Revelation 13:17. This is exactly what is happening, folks. And the whole Muslim thing is an attack on Christianity. Would you agree there, Doug? Doug Millar is my guest.
No question about it. Oh, yeah, I agree 100%, Clay. And so now, during the last 10, 11 minutes, I want to take the gloves off and reveal things about the last two popes, including the current one, that I've never discussed before on the air, okay?
Go ahead.
Number one, of course, we know this for a fact. And in fact, a dear friend of mine who's been my best mentor for the last 13 years, who is a lawyer, not an attorney. His name is Dr. Mel Laney, and he lives 15 miles from the White House over in Maryland. And he agreed with me when I stated that Pope Ratzinger, I don't call him Pope to give his name, I call him the Ratzinger, okay? Because that's his real name. And I said, do you agree with me that for the last 20 years, that Pope Pius II was in leadership, that Ratzinger, who's a cardinal, ran the Vatican? He said, yes, there's no question about that. And then, of course, Ratzinger became Pope after the Pope died. And so, and he was in power, as I recall, for 10 plus years before he resigned. And so I tell you this, for 30 years he ran the Vatican, and the Vatican never helped America expose the priests sexually abusing children. They never helped us expose the bishops, archbishops, and cardinals in America who were protecting the priests who sexually abused, tortured, and in some of the cases, they murdered children. It's well documented, including in the book, The Final Cover-Up, written by my dear friend John DeCamp. We've been close friends for over 23 years. And he was studied for years to be a Catholic priest, and he exposed the fact that in Omaha, Nebraska, a priest there sex abused, tortured, and murdered a child, and he was an alcoholic, and the archbishop there in Omaha, in Nebraska, I should say, he protected this priest who tortured and murdered a child. It was not like Monsignor Robert Hupp, H-U-P-P, who ran Boys Town, exposed that fact. And so Hupp told DeCamp about it, and that's why it's in the book, The Final Cover-Up. Now, the things that are not in the book, and I've never told public on any radio show except my own last week. Now I'm taking the gloves off regarding Ratzinger and Pope Francis, the first and only Jesuit to ever be a Pope, and who's the current Pope. All right. Kevin Annett, A-N-N-E-T-T, and I teamed up together, and about 6 or 7 weeks ago, he was on my show twice in a period of 8 days. And the first time, he stated that a lot of things about the Pope and the cover-up of the Pope of murder of children. They found 50,000 young children who are almost all Indians. Their bodies, their skeletons were buried in the back of where they had Indian, what they called schools and homes. They were brainwashing the children to not follow their Indian family members. And that was in Canada. They found them murdered in mass graves all over Canada in the last 20 years, thanks to Kevin Annett. But what was so even more important is that Kevin Annett went to Brussels, Belgium, and with 6 other world organizations, they formed 2 tribunals back in 2011 and 2013 after Pope Francis took over in 2013. And they put both Ratzinger and the Queen of England and many other people, including George Soros. And then, of course, in 2013, they put Pope Francis, and he became Pope, on trial for the sex abuse, torture, and murders of children. And the tribunals, which had juries, and there were 40 witnesses, 6 of them alone were right in Vancouver, BC, Indians that came to the homes in the area. All 6 of them were murdered, but most of them were not murdered because they went into hiding. But 15 of them disappeared over a murder. That's the documented fact. And so when I started working with Kevin Annett, all of a sudden I started having trouble with my cell phone. I started having trouble with my broadcast. I had trouble with my desktop computer, and couldn't get on the internet most of the time. But we knew, like Bill Grice, you know, obviously him. He's been one of my national crime references. I put on my first list back in 1994, naming over 10 people because nobody had ever heard of me. And so Bill Grice said, when you're on a bombing mission at night and you're over your target, you'll know it because you're getting lots of flak. So you can't see your target, but you know you're over the target with it because of the flak, so drop your bombs. And that's what we're doing. And so Kevin Annett, when he came back on 8 days later, he stated that the Pope, when he goes to Philadelphia, he's going to be meeting with a national conference of pedophiles.
All right, Doug, we're running out of time here. Tell people how they can get your book, and let me thank you for being on my show today and putting up with me.
Oh, thank you so much, Clay, for having me on. It's been a privilege and a pleasure, let me tell you. So my book, it will not be out until I speak in Washington State at the SeaTac Airport, the DoubleTree Inn, as I said, October 16th and the 17th on a 3-day national and international conference. There's going to be probably over 500 people there. They had over 350 last year. And so you can, I'll give you my mailing address. And so you can, well, first of all, I always give out my phone number. So let me give that first. My phone number is 707-396-8215. I repeat, 707-396-8215. The book will be out in exactly 5 weeks from now, and because I'm not releasing it until after, I should say while I speak at the conference for 3 days. I'll have a table where everybody is there for 3 days, and then I'll release it nationally and internationally. And so my mailing address is Post Office Box 471475. I repeat those numbers, 471475, Aurora. I'll spell it for you. That's Colorado. A-U-R-O-R-A. I repeat, A-U-R-O-R-A. Colorado zip code 80047. I repeat, 80047. Now, my book is over 250 pages, 8.5 by 11, and I'm almost giving it away to get the publicity out there, because freedom's not free, and I gotta protect my children, my grandchildren, and so I'm getting it out there in a big way. It's going to have a video interview with one of Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino's child sex slave victims, who is exposing him on the video. It's an Army CID 1-hour video. Army CID is Criminal Investigation Division video. And so I just want to wrap up by saying this. She named Aquino in that, and also Lil. And so I wrap up by saying this. The Pope, I predict, will be arriving on a Satanic holy day, Eve, the fall equinox. He will be going to the Masonic Lodge, world headquarters of the Masons, 13 blocks from the White House, for a human sacrifice at midnight the day he arrives. So he'll probably take a nap before he goes to it, and then after he takes a nap, after the event for 3 hours.
All right. We're out of time, Doug. We're out of time. Thank you very much. Appreciate everything you're doing.
Okay, bye. Thanks.